Give us the rundown.
Sure. I'm just gonna go by my Reddit name, Siberia. And I have a story that happened when I was about 11 or 12. So this was like in 2008. And at the time, I was living in a suburb of Dallas called McKinney in Texas. And I think I was probably driving, or I was in the back seat really. And my parents were driving, and we were a ways down our street, and we were going home. And I was looking out the window, and we came across this house on the corner. And we passed this house a lot, and I never really noticed it too much, except that it had a really large red gate that was kind of prominent. And while we were driving by, I saw something really unusual. I don't know how to even call it, like a humanoid figure, a small creature was behind the gate. And I don't know exactly how tall they were. I would say like 5 foot or under probably. And they had a really large head, like not like a human would have, a really large head, really scruffy brown hair. I think they were just wearing a t-shirt. I don't even think they were wearing like normal clothes. But the weirdest thing about them was their eyes were like really huge. And if you've seen like these paintings by Margaret Keane, she was like an illustrator in the past. It looked so much like that. It's kind of uncanny how much whatever I saw looked like that, and it really freaked me out. I didn't know what I was seeing. I kind of like did a double take, and I was like, "What is this?" Um, and we drove on, and I didn't see it again. But whenever I passed that house, I had like a really eerie, uncomfortable feeling, and I just kind of was hoping I would never see it again. But I didn't know how to explain what I saw. It was so weird. I remember telling my dad about it, and he was kind of like, I was like, was that just a weird looking person, or, I mean, what did I see? And he seemed to think that it wasn't anything normal, and it didn't feel like a weird looking person. It really felt like something else.
I just looked up. I didn't know what you were talking or who you were referring to when you said Margaret Keane. So I just
Mhm.
I pulled up photographs or her paintings, and man, that's those are freaky, dude. Those don't.
They're really freaky. Yeah, it was not like a pleasant thing to see. The eyes were almost exactly like her paintings, which is weird.
So she seems to be a little bit
And
of
I,
a fan of the Black Eyed Children.
huh, yeah.
Do you know what those are?
I saw you guys did some posts about it, some podcasts about it. But I don't know that much.
Jackass, you want because you know more about this than I do. You want to?
There's not a whole lot known about them. They're kind of just these weird looking, like I think that they're referred to as some type of weird spirit. But they're
Huh.
like apparently they're really bad, and this is me butchering the lore behind them, but they're really bad, and they're kind of like have that vampire lore behind them where they can't enter your house or anything unless you let them. They're commonly seen like
Mhm.
on the side of the road late at night, kind of stuff, and or like they'll
Hmm.
show up at your front door, kind of thing, and they'll ask to come in. And basically, all the stories behind them, whether verified or not, say that the people that actually let them in, are never heard from again, and then the people that refuse and end up telling the story, everyone's like, it's a good thing you didn't let them in because there's no real
Yeah.
stories about people that actually like let them into their car or let them into the house.
It just, I think that I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like the fact that it was behind a gate was like weird. Like it was standing behind the gate in the house.
Can you
And I don't know, that seems like a threshold thing, like the door,
mm,
the entering. I don't know.
can you do me a favor and give me the rundown again about what it looked like to you when you saw it?
Sure. It was pretty short and kind of squat. Like it wasn't like thin. It was like
Mm,
pretty squarish looking, and it
it
had a
was
really
chunky.
big head. but it wasn't like unproportional. It kind of like went together with the body.
Mm-hmm.
So a really big head, really scruffy brown hair, large eyes, like the paintings I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember like any teeth or like weird mouth stuff. I feel like that was probably normal. And it was wearing like a large, oversized, like green T-shirt. I think
Hmm. That's kind of interesting.
it looked kind of disheveled. I don't know.
So when you saw this thing, were you driving by or were you parked in a position where you could actually like, get a good look at it?
We were driving pretty slowly by because it was residential.
Okay, so it's
Um,
like 20 miles an hour at
or we
most.
could have. I mean, I can't even remember. We could have been walking too. Like it. I was like pretty young, so it wasn't like a fast drive by. It was
Hmm.
like enough for me to get a pretty decent look at it.
So whether you were walking or driving, I mean, that's basically irrelevant. It's you were going slow enough to get a good look.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you see it move at all? Did it move? Did it interact with you in any way? Did it react to seeing you? Did it see you? You know, tell me about that.
I think it saw me. Honestly, I can't remember. The snapshot that stays in my mind is it being at the like peering over the gate, kind of. But I think it may have like walked up to the gate even from the house. It was like an old two-story house. Um, so I think it may have like walked up to the gate.
And you said it was a child, like it looked like a child.
I don't. It's hard for me to say. It didn't seem like an adult, but it didn't seem like a little kid either. It just seemed like not human. Like it's hard to describe.
Didn't
It looked like those paintings though.
so it wasn't proportionate to what you expect with humans.
Yeah, it if it was a person, it was like a like no one I've ever seen.
I'm gonna kind of go down the Black Eyed Children route with this one. Um, I think one thing that would really like that would kind of put my mind in the right direction is the tone of the skin. So like, what color was it? I remember.
It was normal. It had normal skin. Like it was Caucasian.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't have like a weird tinge or anything to the skin.
It wasn't like a little gray man or anything like that. All
It
right.
wasn't like green or anything.
Okay. So I'm kind of going down the route of like some Black Eyed Children thing going on here.
Yeah, something
Huh.
probably paranormal. I don't know. I wouldn't even. I don't think I would classify it as something related to the Black Eyed Children because the lore is very specific surrounding those. And to the few people that I've talked to and that we've had on that have actually like have really good stories surrounding the Black Eyed Children, like the lore is always pretty consistent with
Hmm.
that they have like sunken in black eyes that with yours I wouldn't even classify it in that range. I think it's something else. I really do. I don't
Hmm.
it doesn't sound human for sure, but
So
Yeah, I posted it on Reddit and I got some like a few responses that were funny. Like one person thought it was like an alien with a wig, which I don't really resonate with that. And then some other people mentioned like I think some South American like spirit that I had never heard of before. And other people said like elves or gnomes or that kind of thing. But I don't know. I mean, it's hard because I looked that stuff up and I was like, no, I mean, it didn't really look like any of that.
Mhm.
But um it wasn't like stereotypical with a hat or anything.
So for you, do you think it was like an alien, or what exactly do you think it is, or do you just not know?
I don't know. I really don't know. I feel like I was surprised anyone even like looked at my post because I feel like I assume most people have had weird experiences like that in their lives where they can't really explain what they saw.
Oh yeah,
Um
more than you think.
yeah, and I think that's pretty normal, but No, I have no theory about it. I feel like it was maybe like a fairy, a
Mm.
fae or whatever, you know, like how there's another realm that people talk about in like Celtic mythology.
Mhm.
Maybe it's something like that. I don't know. Maybe it's a ghost. I have no idea. It didn't seem like it was, you know, cheerful or anything good.
So it gave you like bad vibes.
Yeah, it gave me not good vibes. I didn't want to see it again. It was very eerie.
Hmm. I don't know, man. This is kind of a weird one because I've never I've never I've never heard of anything like it.
Sorry, I pulled up a Forbidden subreddit real quick, and Zane was giggling at what I was showing him. Yeah, no, I. Are you familiar with a lot of the fairy related stories that people talk about? Like, generally these ones pop up on r slash the truth is here, which is like where people talk about more humanoid related things. And I hear a
Mhm.
lot of the time about people who describe like seeing these like gnomes or fairies when they're kids, and then eventually they grow out of it and they
Yeah.
stop seeing them.
Yeah, I read some of those like about like I don't know, like especially in Mexico for some reason, like people seeing like gnomes like I don't know, messing with their kids, like pinching their kids or something. But in all those descriptions, they're like really tiny and they like run into a tree or something. And like, I don't really feel like that's like what I saw at all. But yeah, I'm not super familiar with that stuff, but I've read a little bit of it.
Yeah, no. There's a lot of weird accounts of. Do you remember the Pukwudgie episode way back?
Of course. I was actually on side note, I was getting vibes or sort of having flashbacks to what was originally supposed to be our very first episode. Do you remember that girl? Do you remember her story? This may be kind of related to you when it comes to like the fae or to gnomes. She said
Hmm.
that in her neighborhood, it was kind of a very rural area,
Mhm.
and not only her but the kids that she went to school with at the time would always talk about saying these things that they described as like forest people. So like
Hmm.
little guys that live in the forest. That kind of just like brought back memories. But the Pukwudgie, go ahead, Stekas.
Mhm.
Yeah, no. There's a lot of weird humanoid things that people see that are really unexplainable. Um,
Yeah.
I love that you brought up. I forgot about that whole thing. Actually, we haven't talked about it in a while, but our very first episode was this. I can't even say that it was our very first episode because we never got to record it. But we had this girl that was going to come on who lived in like backwoods region. I've talked about this in a couple other episodes very briefly, but she described that she used to see like they were in deep wooded areas that she would see these like humanoid like things that looked like they were made out of the forest that like would peek out and stuff from like the tree lines and stuff. But
Hmm.
as they she said that they would, you know, she really didn't talk about it like if I remember correctly, and then like the few people that she told like said like, oh yeah, you know, we see those too, and like the kids around the school like said that they would see him as well. And then whenever they would mention it to like the teachers and stuff, they would be, or like any adult in the area, they'd be really fucking weird about it, and they would
Hmm.
they would just kind of dodge the question and get really uncomfortable when they started talking about that. And she said as the area became much more developed that they stopped seeing them, and that the encounters that people were like people seeing them just definitely dropped off very dramatically as they began to develop the area. So, by the way, we should
That's
message
so
her
interesting.
because I still want to have her on because that was an awesome story in the few times that we've talked to her.
Sorry, what were you gonna say?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say that's interesting. Like, where this all took place was not rural. It was, I mean, it's a suburb, but
Hmm.
where I lived was actually a pretty old neighborhood. It was like a, you know, a historic neighborhood. So it was, you know, at least 100, if not older, years old.
Really?
And it wasn't super built up, but you know, there was houses that had been there for a really long time. And I imagine the house that I passed was not a new house.
Hmm.
Interestingly enough, it's like a historical bed and breakfast now, but I think at the time it was residential.
I've always gotten weird
So
vibes
I
from
don't know, that
those.
makes me wonder.
I've always gotten weird vibes from those like old bed and breakfast style homes. Um,
Hmm.
because I'm from Oregon, for people that don't know. In Eugene, there's a few of them. I've lived in the Bay Area most of my life, and there's actually quite a few out there as well. And every time you pass one, it's just like it doesn't fit in. You know, it doesn't fit in where it is.
Mhm.
So I mean, if that place that you saw, whatever it may be, we'll just call it a what do you want to call it? Ferry.
Fuck it, let's call it a ferry. Yeah, we'll call it a ferry. Fuck it.
All right.
Yeah. So the ferry. You have a question for her first? No. Okay. Um, yeah. There's so many weird like forest creatures and stuff that people like. You don't hear about those a whole lot. Generally, it's like when you talk about forest stuff, you hear about like weird witchcraft, ghosts, or Sasquatch related stuff out in the forests. Um,
Mm.
but like from time to time, there's these stories that pop up of something that you saw, which I kind of want to lean. Honestly, I want to lean towards paranormal more than anything, since it like I don't know, it just didn't seem right. It sounds more like a paranormal related account to me than anything else. So, but I still kind of want to call it a fairy. But um, that's so weird, so creepy. More that I think about it,
Yeah.
like that's so creepy.
And I haven't really even talked to many people about it. Like I told my dad when it first happened because he's had a lot of really weird experiences himself. Like when he was younger, growing up in Ohio, he had all sorts of weird stuff happen. So I kind of told him about it. But besides him, I haven't really talked about it to anyone.
So the few people that you have told about it, can you recall like what their demeanor or their responses were, how they took it?
I mean, my dad seemed a little unsettled.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he believed me. He didn't think I was making anything up. Um, but he didn't have an explanation for it, really.
Mm-hmm.
I wish that he had.
Is,
And I told my sister too, and she seemed freaked out by it, but you know, she didn't have any insight.
mm. So I take it that this doesn't just apply to you. Actually, this goes for almost everyone that we've talked to. They don't like talking about their kind of experiences with the unknown because they're
Mhm.
afraid of being called crazy or weird, or they're just seeing stuff. Like there's a lot of
Hmm.
people nowadays that if you were to tell them some weird story like that, like, "Hey, I saw what I think is a ghost," they'd chalk it up, call you weird, or tell you were seeing things, but they never actually listen to what you have to say and take into account that maybe that is exactly what you saw. So I mean, I understand why people and yourself would not want to go around talking about this taboo.
I think it's different for me actually. Like I totally get that for some people, but for
Mm,
me it was like my family like I don't think they would judge me and like I also just know that it really happened. But for me it's like I think I didn't really want to think about it. Like I think it kind of disturbed me
mm.
and I wanted to kind of like block it out or not focus on it if that makes sense.
I think
Like
that's
I don't
completely
think it was
fair.
about thinking I sounded crazy. I think it was more about like I don't want to think about that happening.
Yeah, I know exactly your mindset with that. I think that's completely like rational and fair.
One of the stories that I really wish we could have done a podcast on is like, for example, Daniel. Like, for example, he didn't talk about his Sasquatch encounter for nearly 30 years because he was afraid that like he would lose his
Mhm.
job and stuff. Is that people would genuinely think he was crazy? Back in the '80s when he.
Really?
Oh yeah, he was like really
Wow.
worried that he would be publicly like ridiculed in the community for telling that story.
Huh.
So now that he's like retired and he's not worried about that kind of stuff anymore, he came forward with his story like on one of the Facebook pages for it, and I reached out to him and asked if he would come on and tell his story, and he seemed like he was really itching to tell his story because, I mean, keeping
Yeah.
something that like seeing something like that and keeping it quiet for 30 years can't be easy. Like only talking to the other three people that you saw it with about, like, man, I'd want to tell everybody if
Yeah.
I saw something like that, but then like you really got to think like, am I going to lose my job, like stuff like that. I get it. And there's one.
But I think it's more accepted now too. Like now we have like forums and we have like places for people to share their stories in a way that I don't think that you had in the 80s.
That is completely correct. Um, like if you were to think back, even like 2000, I'll say 2001, you'd really have to dig through the
Mhm.
internet to find a web page that's like all about seeing the unknown, seeing Bigfoot or UFOs or ghosts or whatever. But nowadays, and like we really got it good. Like we got Reddit, which has a bunch of subreddits for anything, for witchcraft, for
Mhm.
UFOs. The UFO subreddits have really gone downhill, but you know, it's generally more accepted, and you can find communities that kind of have the same mindset as you.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah, I agree.
Everyone's experience is theirs, and we're not here to tell you otherwise. But let me tell you about some of the paranormal Facebook pages, UFO Facebook pages. They're a little out there, all right, even for me.
I would like to
Yeah.
say there are people out there that so what they saw is what they saw, but they like to exaggerate to create
Mm.
a more exciting story. So Forbidden
Mhm.
Episode, he really liked to exaggerate to create a more compelling and exciting story. So it's not entirely true, which kind of discredits the entire thing. Kind of going for.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think a lot of real stories are not like necessarily super super crazy, but they're just like a little off,
yeah, for sure.
and that's
And
like more real.
yeah, sure, there of course are credible, very intense encounters that people have had that we've had on the show that are very like this. It wasn't a short little thing; it was a very intense, long encounter of whatever it was, and
Mm.
we've had a couple of those for
Mhm.
sure. But one story that I really wish we could have had on um, was I talked to a gentleman way back in the beginning when we first started this thing up, and he told a story about he wasn't going on like he's like, oh yeah, I saw this alien or whatever it was, but he was a very sound guy, and I talked to him privately, but he just said he wasn't comfortable coming on and putting himself out there like that for family ridicule or whatever it would have been. But he told a story that back in like he was an older guy like Daniel, and he was telling me a story about how he was a steel mill worker back in late 70s, I believe. And so like he was definitely an older gentleman at this point when I was talking to him. And he was very young out there. He had lived on a farm, and he remembers in particular there was one of his, like, keep in mind this is like farmland. There's You got one or two neighbors, and that's all you got out there. He said he had one neighbor that was really close, and the neighborhood or the neighbor's boy raised cattle for the state fair, and it was a 2-year-old female, and he would go out there. He'd brush it every day. He'd get it halter trained and take care of it and do all that he needed to do with it and get it used to get it ready for the fair at the end of the year. And he said that they had seen the animal the night before, and it was fine. Everything was normal. It was late at night. Everyone saw the animal out in the field. It was fine. And of course, it's a paddock field, so there's fences and stuff. And the next morning,
Mm.
the sun went out. Young boy, the neighbor's young boy, went out to do his normal routine with the animal, and the animal didn't come up like normal, and he got very concerned that it had gotten out of the fences. So he went running the perimeter, thinking that it got out, and found the animal dead in the middle of the field. And he went and saw the animal himself, and it was, I actually wrote about this on our Facebook page. You'll have to dig for it. It's on our subreddit too. But I wrote out the story that he shared, and it's just, he said that the animal was drained of blood, like organs were missing, and was very clean.
Hmm.
And like just a bunch of weird, like classic mutilation UFO kind of style stuff, and it really messed the kid up because that was like the kid's pet basically, and said that it really messed the kid up. And he said he's never seen anything like that. He's never heard any personal stories from people that he knew about stuff like that happening out there. And I think this happened in Tennessee, and said they never saw any lights in the sky. They never saw nothing like that. And everything was pretty normal. But that mutilation really like was freaking weird, and it just really didn't sit right with him. And that's why he told the story. And
Hmm.
he said one of the really weird things is that the animals wouldn't even touch it. Like the dogs would eat anything. They wouldn't go near the carcass. He said like there was a bunch of just weird little things with it that just weren't right.
Aliens or El Chupacabra, one of the two. Um,
Or vampires or something
Vampires,
weird. I
yeah.
don't know. No blood? That's really weird.
But back to your story, because we kind of got off topic there. Originally, I was thinking Black Eyed Children because the way you described it was similar to that woman's paintings, and that's kind of what she depicted. But I think that what you saw may have been paranormal related. Like that's kind of the route I'm starting to go with it.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I I don't know. When I was really little, I saw some weird stuff in my house
mhm.
that really freaked my mom out. It makes me feel like more like it was something like a ghost.
Mhm.
But that experience was really like the people looked really normal. They didn't seem weird. Like their proportions were normal.
Yeah.
And I've only had two weird experiences. The one that I talked about with you guys and this other one. I haven't had like a ton. But they seemed really distinctly different to me.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a ghost or anything like that. But I mean maybe it was.
You can go the whole angels, and because I don't know your personal beliefs. I don't know if you want to get into that. There are some people who are very spiritual, like myself. I wouldn't say very for me, but people that are spiritual who like to believe that maybe there are angels and demons. There's I can't
Mm.
say that there is. There's no proof. Um, I think that there are ghosts and stuff like that, things that roam this world that we
Mhm.
can't see, but it's the reference to make it easier. I can reference episode 3. I don't remember the guy's name. I'm so bad with names. He said that when he fell into the pool, he was asked a question, and the question was, "Do you want to live or do you want to die?" And when he answered the question, he was like, "I want to live." Right at that moment, his grandmother, I think it was his grandmother, reached into the pool and pulled him out. And it's things like that that make me believe that mm, there's something else out there, something else.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that
Yeah,
gets
I
us
mean,
in.
I don't have any personal beliefs or anything. Like I wouldn't say I'm a really spiritual or like supernatural believing person in general, but I feel like it's kind of stupid to say that none of that exists.
Yeah, no, we got into the whole topic of like the actual term for him isn't the term that everybody knows is reapers. That's what we got into with that guy, and we talked about reapers because lore speaking,
Mm.
there's in just about every religion they talk about some type of being. In what we refer to them as reapers, is there's some type of being that chooses like handles whether or not you live or die, and that's what we got into
Mm.
with that guy. So like, there's all kinds of weird stuff surrounding that kind of stuff, whether you believe it or not. That there's definitely a lot of accounts, like the people that have died and said that they talked to something, whether it's God or whatever. not something that I believe. I'm not religious by any means, but um, it could be a reaper, for lack of a better term, whatever they are. But who really knows? There's only a handful of people that
Yeah.
have accounts like that, and it's very hard for us to track people down that have like accounts with something like a reaper or something like that. So, and also, who really knows? Like when you're dying, who knows what your brain's doing? But
Mhm.
it's really something to think about for sure.
They're releasing a lot of that what do you call it? No, the DMT, like inside of your MDMA, whatever it is, inside of your brain.
Oh yeah, it's DMT, I think. Like, do you mean like the mechanical L stuff?
It's released by the people call it the third eye. I don't know the scientific name for it. Inside of your brain that it releases in your brain when you're dying, supposedly, and you see shit. So that's what people describe as the light, or whatever it may be that they're experiencing.
Huh.
Dimethyltryptamine drugs, man. It's all the
Yeah,
drugs.
the DMT thing is like kind of interesting because I mean I'm not like an expert. I've never taken it or anything, but I think it like everyone has like a really similar experience when they take it, which I find really weird. Like they talk about seeing like these mechanical elves. And it's like pretty like widespread. It's not like a one person takes it and they have it.
I don't want
Which
to
is
go
kind of
like
interesting.
I don't want to turn this into a drug related podcast, but I can go on my personal psychedelic
No.
experiences. Like Joe Rogan, for example. I really love his story where he talks about his DMT trip, and he was sitting there, and then he got skyrocketed up, and then he was like floating around, and all these gestures were all over the place, like "ah, fuck you," pointing and laughing at him. It's hilarious. But
Yeah.
I think that
I guess the point I think that's interesting is like that cultures talk about stuff for a really long time, like even surrounding like different drug things, and then like people in the modern times have that experience too. And I think that happens even without drugs. Like I wouldn't be surprised if we see things now that were described hundreds of years ago.
well, if to make it like a little bit more interesting is not the right word, just to like fuck, I can't think right now. Long story short, certain cultures throughout history, like from the ancient Egyptians to I don't want to say Mayans because I don't know if that's what they were, but people that used to live in the Amazon rainforest and people that still do live in the Amazon rainforest used ayahuasca, which is made from the vine of a tree down there. So like that, I'm not sure if the proper term is DMT, but the chemical compound that makes you see shit is not only natural in our brains, it's natural in the brains of like rats and mice. And it comes out of these vines that are found from hanging from trees, like something's going on, something weird's going on, and it's linked somehow. To call it paranormal, to call it spiritual or whatever, I mean you can, but there's something going on. Sorry, I went on a little rant.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would just say the only thing I would add is if anyone has like any insight about this story or anything similar happened to them or they have a theory, it would be cool to hear about it.
Okay.
For sure. Alrighty. Thank you very much for coming on, and see you around.